The more complex the organism, the entity, the more efficient and the greater its possibility field. As billions of cells and trillions of atoms come together to form the human body, the possibility field expands exponentially relative to those atoms being organized in a random pattern, in a simpler pattern existing as oxygen or carbon dioxide. In the same way as human beings go from isolated individual patterns, the possibility field expands exponentially as humans form a synergistic whole, an identity, a pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being that is, as a group, as a larger organism, as a species. And this is a transcendent moment where the I, the ego, expands its boundary, its sense of self, from something very small to something much bigger. Now, in the current sociopathic state of brain development, where the majority of human beings, the majority of the time, are referencing their bodies, their ego, in a state of fear, organizing around survival and security, protection of image, protection of perception, protection of money, protection of things, right? As we navigate that territory as dissociated egos, as sociopathic eyes, we must face the unknown. We must learn to trust. We must face the unknown in order to expand our sense of identity to the larger organism, to release this thousandfold synergy. We must expand from the I to the I that identifies with the we, because the efficiencies are so high in that movement. It's just a tremendous blessing, and we can see that in the sociopathic release of enlightened self-interest in capitalism, where no one person could ever create a microchip. Not in a million years. One person could never create a microchip ever. They would die before they mastered the various specialized skills and raised the money necessary to produce a single microchip. But with capitalism, the worship of capital, through the framework of enlightened self-interest, which means that I don't want to be sued, and so I'm not going to treat you bad. I want you to keep doing business with me, so I'm going to pay you. And it is very important, as a side note, to understand that we are in a sociopathic state, meaning that if you put a store open to the public and do not have any security officers there, and just put a tin and say, please put the money in the tin, or please ring up your credit card, and there's no security cameras, and there is no law to enforce it, that 70% of the people, 70% of the time, will take the clothes, the food, the items, and not pay for it, because they are no longer frightened of being caught, of being put in trouble because other people are doing it and it's expedient. Now, this is called sociopathic behavior, where the only reason you do the right thing, the balanced thing, is out of fear. I'm afraid of what my neighbors will think. That's sociopathic. Why are you afraid of your neighbors? Because they are sociopathic, right? So 70% of the time, 70% of people, when nobody is looking, will do the expedient, unfair thing. Meaning we are in sociopathic territory as a species, identifying with I separate from the one, but nonetheless, through trust frameworks, through enlightened self-interest, where I know I'm on camera, so I'm going to pay you, and you're going to pretend that I would have paid you anyway, right? Right. Look at the collaboration that has been made possible by enlightened self-interest, right? Reptilian behavior curbed by the consequences of visibility into doing the right thing because it would be more expensive not to do the right thing. And that's what the police is for. That's what the military is for. That's what door locks are for. That's what alarms are for. That's what guns are for. Right? That's what the threat of the legal system is for, is I'm going to frighten you into a state where you will do the right thing because it's more expensive in the long run if you always don't, right? And this is a very, of course, lonely place to live, but it is the status quo. It is what's happening most of the time to most people, right? Where that sociopathic reptilian impulse is being curbed by fear. Now, this is also held in place by scarcity, because when you have superabundance, it's much more fun to have love and generosity. It's much more fun to create beauty, right, than it is to create ugliness. It's much more fun to treat someone nicely than to treat someone poorly. But that's in an abundant framework. In a scarcity framework, if I share this with you, if I pay my rent, I don't have any money to buy clothes. Can I get away? Will you let me not pay my rent so I can buy some clothes? Because I can't have both because it's scarce. When you have a low competence culture, you have scarcity. And when you have scarcity, you have fear. Fear of loss, fear of not having enough, not surviving, not being secure. When you have fear, you have reptilian behavior. You have sociopathic behavior. And that's what we have, right? We're surrounded by images of people who do not have, people who are being raped, people who are being tormented, people who are being invaded, people that do not have a security of survival. And in that state of scarcity, resting on the foundation of incompetence, right? First comes incompetence, then comes scarcity, then comes fear of pain, and then comes reptilian fight, flight, freeze, manipulative behavior. And then comes the police to make sure that you stay in line, right? So this is the state that we're in. And as we move from that fear-based, ego-based identity to the transcendent identity of the species, we face the unknown. We face the void. It's too much, right? I can't see clearly, right? Because our identity is so small. When I give something to you, I don't see how it's benefiting me in any way. And I'm afraid there won't be enough. I'm afraid I'll be all alone and not have anything, and nobody will care because they're all reptiles, right? And so to make that bridge into the unknown. We need a technology. We need visibility in the form of data, real-time living data, app technology. We need to see the synergies emerging, and to identify with being a part of that, we need to see it. We need to see it with our eyes. We need to see that this person is 20% happier because of what I did. And we need to see that my reputation, that people are praising me for making that person 20% happier, right? We need to witness the creation of superabundance with visibility to penetrate the fear, the unknown, the doubt, the paranoia with data. We need a technology that we've never had before, right? Seeing how these behaviors, how these protocols benefit everyone, and how as everyone begins to do them, the well-being of the group lifts exponentially. We need a transcendent goal, right? The goal of making as much money as possible for me is not a transcendent goal. It is a fear-based goal, and the more we have, the more that can be taken away from us, right? I've got this, but they're looking at me, and maybe they're going to, I've got to put more locks, I've got to do this. It's not a transcendent goal. It's an isolating goal. But what is the replacement? What is the replacement? Right? Measuring the well-being in the neighborhood, measuring the well-being in the cult and the culture, and playing a role, engaging in group exercising, and then remeasuring. Well-being for the culture, when that is the goal, when that is visible, and when something I did contributed a measurable unit, right? My neighborhood just spiked 5% in well-being because of something I did. And with my neighborhood spiking, and this neighborhood spiking, and this neighborhood spiking, right? Our county went up 10% because we did this, right? A transcendent goal to realize and maximize the sustainable well-being of all of its members, to start seeing the pieces as they fit together. This is the transcendent doorway out of the reptilian brain into the human brain, into the empathic brain, where the key questions of any empathic cult, of any empathic culture, of any empathic group or individual, the key questions are: who is in the most pain? How can we help? Who is in the most pain? How can we help? Right? When that is the response of the group, the bottom, the pit of pain within the group, the low points, bottom out, right? Lift up. The joy, the excitement, peak, raise up higher. Because when you know you'll be cared for when life throws you a curveball, you're no longer afraid of life. It's an opportunity to love and to learn. When you know you'll be shamed and abandoned when life throws you a curveball, you're terrified of life, and you're terrified of other people, and rightly so. Right. So we are on the threshold of a 1,000-fold increase in sustainable human well-being as the I pivots to the we, where we identify with the group, and as our technology reaches a threshold, reaches a point where the data of how each person's protocol, each person's action correlates to personal and individual and global and ecological well-being, right? This is a tremendous pivot point, and it's perhaps the most profound pivot for the human species, which is the most influential species that we are aware of on the planet today, right? Somewhat egocentric in the sense that you could say that oxygen is the most influential organism on the planet, right? Without it, you don't get people or anything else, right? But we have our own skewed way of thinking, and in that way of thinking, right, we either destroy massive amounts of species or we restore them, right? We plant trillions of trees and become carbon negative, or we cut down trillions of trees and become oxygen negative, develop smog, right? We are a big variable in a lot of these types of dynamics. So we need a transcendent goal, sustainable well-being for the circle. And to pass through the paranoia, the isolation, the fear, the loneliness of the ego, we need a transcendent technology where our behavior shows up in the group in measurable well-being. Right? What do you think?